It's intermission time now, and we'll present, at last, the long-heralded experimental feature on sound, Program 2, in the series called Strange to Your Ears. And, be prepared for anything. We have to pause first for station identification. This is the CBS Radio Network.
WCCO, Minneapolis and St. Paul. 5 degrees below zero in the Twin City area.
It's intermission time on today's Philharmonic Symphony Concert, and we return you to your commentator, Jim Fassett, as he recorded today's intermission feature, Program 2 in the series, Strange to Your Ears.
Did you ever hear of a tonal kaleidoscope? What's this? The different tones blend into each other, making one continuous tone, but with changing characteristics. Just as in a kaleidoscope, one color blends into another. But it's all on one note, middle G. What makes the tonal quality of this one note vary within the single line? Part of it, of course, is due to the playing characteristics of the instruments themselves, how the tone is produced. You probably recognize them: cello, French horn, flute, oboe, violin, trumpet. But mainly, it's a matter of what are called harmonics, overtones. Don't shudder at the terms. All they mean is other pitches, certain combinations of other pitches above the middle G that you're hearing. You don't ordinarily single out these higher pitches, although sometimes you can hear one of them at least very plainly, like in a bell or carillon, you know, when they sound like a series of discords, but they're there just the same. Look, we'll hear this kaleidophone, I guess you could call it, once again. But this time, the very last note you'll hear will be an absolutely pure tone, just the middle G alone, with no overtones at all, no pitches, except that single middle G. And hear how flat and hollow it sounds as it comes out at the very end. Here's the whole blended sequence once more. Only the last tone was free of overtones, of harmonics. All the others had in them different combinations of these additional tones, these pitches above the middle G. You wouldn't notice them in themselves, but they were there. These. So you can imagine with a symphony orchestra, or even with a small combination of instruments, what a complicated fusion of sounds you're hearing, even with a string quartet. Look, perhaps the clearest and still the most dramatic demonstration we can make will be with a quartet of string instruments, contrasting the music they make with the same notes produced in absolutely pure tones, devoid of any overtones, and so with no tonal color at all. Here's just the beginning of Schubert's Death and the Maiden Quartet. You all know it. Now, we'll compile the four voices of this composition in pure tones, not with a musical instrument. No musical instrument is capable of producing an absolutely pure tone, devoid of overtones. We'll do it electronically, producing just the fundamental notes themselves. Here's the top line, the first voice. Characterless, isn't it? And now the second voice, making up the harmony. And the third voice, the part played by the viola in the string quartet, and the bass line, the cello part. Now, by purely mechanical means, with no musical expression whatsoever, we'll put the four parts together. The notes exactly as Schubert wrote them, but nothing more, just notes, tones, pure tones, but no music. Cold, characterless, non-musical, non-human. Schubert wrote from the heart, and his music has to be performed from the heart and heard from the heart. When the four musicians play this Death and the Maiden Quartet, they have many means of expression: intonation, nuance, tonal color, rhythmic variation, crescendo, diminuendo, all the musical means they're capable of deriving from their instruments. And it's the combination of overtones in the sounds they produce that's foremost in varying the tonal color of their music. Here's a vivid contrast, alternating one result with the other. Listen. The principal point we're trying to make in this experimental program is that sound is very largely a matter of what you're used to hearing. The quality of stringed instruments, like the ones you've just heard, you take more or less for granted. You don't analyze each tone to find out what gives it its particular characteristics. And the same goes for all sorts of perfectly familiar sounds, sounds you hear nearly every day of your life. But change those sounds, alter them, as we can do on tape, and they become sometimes unrecognizable. By making them louder or softer or faster or slower, by raising the pitch or lowering it, you change at the same time the combination of those overtones we've been talking about. Some become prominent, others disappear. For instance, do you know what this is? Pretty baffling, isn't it? Well, it's this, an octave lower and played backwards, starting at the end, playing back to the beginning. The first time you listened, you heard the dying sound first, the very end of it, growing louder and louder to the instant the bell was struck. You didn't recognize it the first time because the sound, with its complex pattern of overtones, came to your ears in reverse. What's this? Make a guess? No, it's nothing but this. One little tinkle on a triangle. But we lowered it in pitch many, many times. And in so doing, those myriads of overtones that give the triangle its particular ringing quality were lowered as well, becoming louder and clashing with each other as we increase the volume. So this becomes this. This next experiment was a lot of fun. We took into the studio a dozen 3-day-old baby chicks, and we recorded their peeping. Anybody not ever hear this sound? Now, listen. These are the same little fellas, but how many of you would have recognized them as baby chicks if this had been the sound you'd listened to? School of sea lions, they're the same baby chicks. For just a moment, let's listen to this one little fella, alone. Come on. Would you like to hear him transformed into a seagull? Maybe a baby seagull. And now, to show how completely the quality of the sound is changed as the pitch is changed, here is our innocent little baby chick, 5 times lower in pitch than normal. Some kind of monster. You name it. What's this? A pile driver? No, it's only a faucet dripping. So you see how changing the degree of loudness can change the quality of a sound, too. Loudness and pitch. Of course, on tape recording, raising the pitch and increasing the speed go together. A piano piece, for instance. Flight of the mosquito, in this case. Digital dexterity, as the music critics say. Maybe we can demonstrate clearest with the speaking voice, the manner in which the quality of sound changes with its pitch. We're used to identifying people's voices by their voice quality, as well as by other characteristics, like the general tempo of their speech, modulation, accent, and so forth.
But suppose, as I'm talking to you now, my voice suddenly started getting higher than it normally is, increasing in speed as it's raised in pitch, getting higher and higher all the time till it gets way up here, sounding pretty ridiculous, to be sure, but entirely different in quality as well as in pitch. And then, making a great effort to get back to normal voice again, and normal, recognizable voice quality, I found I couldn't stop lowering the pitch.
And it got way out of hand, getting lower and lower.
And slower, until it sounds just as ridiculous at the other extreme. Down here, it's not just basso profundo, but once again, the quality is changed, too.
Then, bringing it back to normal pitch again, the quality becomes normal as well. But all the time, it's the same voice speaking. Well, that's the end of edition 2 of our experimental sound program called Strange to Your Ears. Almost the end. Recording all these sounds in the studio, it had to be so quiet you could hear a pin drop. It was, so we dropped a pin. Want to hear a pin drop? The way it sounds when we get through with it? Just a common pin.